So, as I mentioned, domain name system is nothing but the conversion methodology between name servers and the lookup service for DNSs that converts any given IP address to the domain name address or vice versa. So, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers is a worldwide organization that allocates IP addresses to Internet service providers who then assign those addresses within their regions. There is a branch of ICANN in Turkey, whom its manager or the director is a close friend of mine, is a worldwide organization, as I mentioned, for the assigned names and numbers. They oversee the registration of domains and domain names. For the remaining 5 years, maybe you have noticed that the generic top-level domain names have dramatically changed. Have you seen any domain name that ends with Istanbul or that ends with live? It's a recent issue, a couple of years ago, so this I can change. Why do we need to end up with only a limited number of suffixes? Instead, we can change different suffixes like Istanbul. For example, please have a look at an HTTP isbak.istanbul. This is the smart city and electronic company of the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, and it ends with .istanbul. So this corporation main issue is oversee the registration of domains and the domain names. So from time to time, early internet applications, there are some protocols in the internet, and each protocol uses a different number or port number. I can make an analogy here. When you go to an airport, there are different terminals. For example, domestic and international. And even for the domestic, there are a number of gates. You can fly to Ankara from Istanbul from a different number gate, to Izmir from a different number gate, or wherever the case. This is the main problem here. So there are a different number of ports that's communicated over a channel, and each port has a specific protocol supported by it. For example, file transfer protocol. Maybe you have noticed from the very early adoptions of internet, the main issue is transferring a file from source to destination. And we use FTP or file transport protocol in order to handle this. There's a secure version of it called SFTP, and it uses public cryptography, where I'm going to mention lately in this perspective. Telnet is nothing but a terminal emulator, and SSH is a secure shell. Hypertext Transfer Protocol is the main protocol that we have been using in our browsers to watch and see the websites. And electronic mail, there are a different number of protocols like POP3 or IMAP. These are standards or protocols to be used for the electronic email exchange. Domain mail server collects incoming mail and transmits to outing mail. Mail server delivers collected incoming mail to clients via different protocols like POP3 or IMAP. For example, I want to give a small example about the simple mail transfer protocol, where you can see that the protocol stands or starts with an initiation message like hello, and then it gives pleased to meet you. There's a mail from dalek@scaro.go. Sender is okay to get it, recipient is get it to okay it, and you transfer the payload. Enter email and with dot on a line by itself. And the subject, for example, exterminate, regards Dalek is the payload, and the numbers starting are the specific commands given in the RFP or request for command RFC of the SMTP. There are some more recent applications which are getting more familiar. For example, voice over IP. The most famous protocol, more than 20 years, is Skype. Also, internet multimedia streaming, unicast, broadcast, on-demand streaming, content delivery networks. Think about the Netflix. Netflix is nothing but an internet multimedia streaming and it's a content delivery network. but the main issue there is that there is an authentication scheme. There are users and passwords. You authenticate yourself. After that, according to your plan, there are some services, and the quality of services can change with respect to the plan. When you think about the World Wide Web, we call it as a hypertext. Why do we call it as hypertext? Because it combines internet technology with the concept of linked documents. Okay, each link can transfer yourself from one page to another and embeds the hyperlinks to other documents. So there's a metadata, and you can combine text, image, video, whatever the case, but eventually it becomes an internet technology from perspective of World Wide Web. Browser, tell me a number of browsers, popular ones. I've been using most of the time Mozilla, Firefox, or Safari. Chrome is a good browser. I don't prefer Internet Explorer, but these are the types of browsers that present materials to the user. Web servers provide access to documents. Think about, now you are watching YouTube and there is a web server of YouTube. It's cloud distributed, okay. There are a number of servers, maybe server farms or farms of server farms. But at least you are using a client from your browser. There is a request and response, and the response comes from nothing but web server. Documents are identified by URLs, Uniform Resource Locators, and transferred using HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Okay. URL, you can understand the fully qualified domain name starting with HTTP or FTP or any other protocol, but it's nothing but trying to identify any document in the World Wide Web. I want to give a small example of a typical URL. It starts with a protocol required to access a document. In my example, it's HTTP, which is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. There is a mnemonic name of host holding the document. For example, it comes from a university, and the main server, also L is by eagle. There are some folders behind directories, directory paths, or the fully qualified path indicating the location of the document within the host file system, and the final suffix, in my example, is nothing but the Jules Caesar.html is the document name. In my previous example, maybe you noticed that the document does not end with .x or XLS. The suffix is HTML. And HTML stands for the Hypertext Markup Language. It encodes a text file and contains text to communicate with browser. The text starts with the smaller symbol and ends with bigger symbol like H1 to start a level 1 heading, or P starts for a paragraph. Probably you have already get familiar with the HTML. In HTML there are links to other documents and content. For example, an href or insert images, img. These are some prefixes or commonly keywords to be used in HTML sites. Let me give a toy example of a simple web page. The page encoded using HTML, tag indicating starts at HTML. Please have a look at the last line. There is a backslash at HTML, so there is a one-to-one correspondence between each tag and the big end of the tag, beginning of the tag and end of the tag. For example, look at the section preliminaries. It starts with head. Head means you can put it into head section, and the title of the page is demonstration page. And the main part, the part of the document that will be displayed by the browser, there is a heading H1, my web page, and it opens a paragraph. Click here for another page, and that stands for the body. Each HTML page should have a head and body. Maybe you can notice that when you open any single tag, there must be a corresponding backslash with the same tag. That gives the scope of the part. If you type it and run it on your browser, your interpreter of the browser should display, or the web page would appear on the computer screen very similar to the figure. My web page, and click here for another page. If you make some enhancement on the simple web page, maybe you can look at after the paragraph, that's the P, we get an anchor tag containing a parameter. Okay. Now we will give a new link, crafty.com demo.html. This is for the other page. Now you can press that button. It's a living URL or link that will jump you to another website. If you want to press the here, okay, you will jump to another site. So the other markup language other than the hypertext is the extensible markup language, a language XML, a language for constructing markup language similar to HTML. Descendant of a SGML and opens doors to a worldwide semantic web. For example, have a look at the example using the XML. Now you don't need to bother with the keywords of the HTTP or HTML. Now you can declare your own tags like start, time, measure. For example, start clap equals to treble, and there is a K called C minor, and time is 2/4. There is a measure. It gives some small examples. And when you concatenate all of that, it gives first 2 bars of the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Okay, it's given like a semantic web. It's like an encoding of any given phenomena into a data structure. But when we will see our data structure and algorithms course, you will understand better, especially with web programming, the means and use of XML. So I will give some small examples about client-side versus server-side. In the client-side, you can use JavaScript or Macromedia Flash. These are the programming language or tools to be used on the client side. Sometimes we call front-end to the client side. And on the server side, there is a common gateway interface, servlets. For example, if you give an applet, Java applet, you need to use it on the client side. But servlet, as it mentioned from name, it must be run on the server side. Java server pages and active server pages, these are two different technologies that have been using for more than 20 years. One former for the programming in Java, and second one is programming in .NET. Okay, you write down the backend code or the server side code, but you need a framework to display them on the server side. The two top technologies there is nothing but Java server pages and active server pages. Please look or try to Google it from your favorite browser. You will see some of the web pages must end with JSP or ASP. And the remaining one is PHP. It's also very familiar and really easy to program. Is another server-side activity. So the next lecture, I will give an example of package shipping example that will emulate or introduce you the layers of software by writing down some internet programming. See you on next lecture. Before the next lecture, I have a small question. After finishing this chapter, please take some notes and ask me when you get a chance the slides or the points where you were not able to understand. This is really important for me because since the classes are asynchronous, there is no means to interact dynamically. You need to take some notes and ask me either by dropping an email or writing down our own WhatsApp group. Furkan is ready to answer those questions or escalate them to me. Thank you very much.